What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we actually get to talk about some pretty good news for PlayStation and kind of two separate things, but really all combining into one. They're participating in shows again. So the big one was the find that they're going to be, and I believe because you have to separate it, a main exhibitor booth at Tokyo Game Show at TGS, which is at the end of September. Now, I believe they were there last year, but in terms of actually being a main, let's say, contributor, right, to the show, they haven't been there in 5 years. Last year, they were there in like an indie type scene. Like they had a booth, but it was smaller. And there's differences in sizes. There's differences in the games that you show, obviously, right? Depending on what size, you're doing it as, right? If you're an indie thing versus like a main thing. So they're going as a main. First time in 5 years. That's big just on its own. You had Hideo Kojima, I believe, do like the googly-eyed, emojis on Twitter. A lot of people kind of immediately thought, even before Hideo did that Death Stranding 2. It's a year away. It's next fall, but could they go to Tokyo Game Show to show off a Death Stranding 2? At the time the show happens, Astrobot has already come out. See, I think Astro would have been a really good, and to be honest with you, because they'd be like a main exhibitor, right? I feel like you could also still have Astro there. It's the same month. It's just later in the month. You can have people play it if they feel like playing it. You know what I mean? So I feel you could have it, but that wouldn't be like the main focus. It would have to be something else. And the two go-tos would be Death Stranding and maybe even like a Lost Soul aside. However, there's more to it because there's an event called ChinaJoy 2024, and this is at the end of July 26th through the 29th, and guess who is going? PlayStation. This shouldn't be surprising for the simple fact that Sony has really recently, over the last probably a year or two, right, we've seen, they've really started to prop up some Chinese developers. They're kind of going for the more under-the-radar type candidates, right? Like China has a gaming scene, but it's kind of in its infancy, right? Like it's trying to get started. You could say Korea, kind of the same thing. Hence, you have a thing like Stellar Blade and stuff, right? It seems like Sony is targeting those kind of key areas and see what comes out of it. Now, Lost Soul aside, it makes a lot of sense. So, when I saw the Tokyo Game Show thing, I got excited, and it's like, to me, it's a good sign no matter what they show. I don't care if they show Death Stranding. I mean, okay, I would like to see it, but I don't care what they show. I think the simple fact is they're participating in shows, which is a good sign. And maybe that means like this fall is going to be bigger for them than, we kind of expected a showcase, but say maybe you weren't, right? Maybe now you are because the fall seemingly is bigger. You look at it right now, right? End of July, you have a Chinese type show. Lost Soul aside, by the way, should be there. And 1,000% should be there. So I hope we get a release date, by the way. But, that's one. And then 2 months later, literally actually 2 months almost to the day, you have Tokyo Game Show. And you could show a couple things there. And then, if you did a showcase in September, in October, you could do it right around TGS. You know what I mean? I think things could hopefully start to be lining up. Also, for the Square Enix crowd out there, Square Enix is also going to TGS. I don't think Kingdom Hearts, but we'll probably talk about that in a separate video. But there you go. It's definitely a good sign regardless. To me, there's really, those two good candidates, I would say. If we could get both of them in the next 2 months through these shows, that would be good. Again, like Astro makes sense, but then it kind of doesn't because it's a little bit after it. And also, this is a PlayStation video, but it's not like a console wars thing. We can talk about whatever I feel like I can kind of bring up. Xbox, I believe, is not going to TGS. Now, I don't remember if they went I feel like they went last year, but I don't, don't quote me on that. You go check if I'm wrong or let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. But I feel like, we know Sony has really just been a no-show across the board. No Gamescom. And I think PlayStation is still not going to Gamescom this year. I'm pretty sure we talked about that already in past videos somewhere. But yeah, so, while that's happening, that's not all that surprising, I guess. Xbox generally shows up. And I think they did TGS last year, but I'm not 1,000% sure. But it seems like they're not going. PlayStation is. So we'll see. I feel like at least the TGS, Gamescom maybe of the world, these are shows that are kind of like you pick and choose, right? Like if you feel like going, if you got something that makes sense to, show up there, you do it. If you don't, now I don't think you should be absent for 5 years, right? But I think, maybe 1 year you go, next year you don't, next year, like on, off. That's maybe, because, they're not the biggest shows of all time. You got to pick games that very much line up for it, right? Whereas like a Summer Game Fest or a Game Awards, it could kind of be anything. You could show a Japanese game at the Game Awards. You could show a Western game. You could show whatever you want. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter too much. But for like a TGS or this ChinaJoy thing, you got to have games that line up for it. If you don't have those games, there would be no reason, I would say, to go, unless maybe you're trying to promote a Western game in those markets, which most of the time doesn't work anyway. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that would even be worth it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.